Welcome to the SVG-TV news for Tuesday, March 28th. I'm Khalil Kato with the details. The Country Engagement Strategy for St. Vincent and the Grenadines 2022-2026 was launched today at the Sunset Shores Hotel. The project is funded by the Caribbean Development Bank at a cost of $240 million EC dollars. Delivering welcoming remarks at the launching ceremony was Director of Economic Planning Ricardo Federick, who said the project reflects the current reality of SVG, which focuses on private sector development, national development planning, roads, transport, water and sanitation, education, social protection and poverty reduction, climate change, disaster risk management, and sustainable energy.
Accordingly, it is evident that the CES program is multi-sectoral in nature and was designed to address our capacity limitations and strengthen our resilience. Today, we gathered here to give recognition of the importance of the country engagement strategy to our recovery and the socio-economic development process, its significance to lives and livelihoods, and the tremendous benefits it will bring to our country once we can implement it. That's very important when it comes to projects and strategies and programs. We have to get them implemented.
Vice President of Operations with the Caribbean Development Bank, Isaac Solomon, said the CDB is pleased to support the developmental agenda of SVG, which is a founding member of the bank.
Our relationship dates back to CDB's establishment over 50 years ago as the only multilateral development bank serving the Caribbean exclusively. Projects approved for St. Vincent and the Grenadines between 1970 to 2021 for a total of almost $600 million United States dollars. And through the partnership with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we continue to build resilience. Today, we honor our partnership with this extension and deepening of our development cooperation to support action on the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, with the launch of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Country Engagement Strategy. The word engagement in the title emphasizes our focus on meaningfully and effectively contributing to the same goals for our region. The strategy is grounded in mutual respect, support, and execution, which will undoubtedly ensure successful implementation over the next 4 years.
Solomon said the country engagement strategy process is characterized by flexibility and responsiveness, which are hallmarks of a positive partnership and rich client experience.
As Minister Camilo Gonçalves said to our staff at the bank only last week, the bank must focus on what counts as development for St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the rest of the region. We are well aware and fully committed to supporting this call to action. The country engagement strategy formulation process builds on a relationship with the outputs, offering a clear roadmap for implementation. This process commenced with critical self-evaluation of the outcomes and performance of the 2014 to 2018 country engagement strategy through the preparation of the Country Strategy Completion Report, the CSCR. This reflection, investigation, and learning are a great starting point for St. Vincent and the Grenadines to set the direction for the next phase of cooperation with the CDB. The process also included assessing the alignment of the previous strategy with the bank's strategic objectives and the performance against the results framework. This was followed by a CDB team using the outputs of your process to help prepare the strategy framework paper, which assessed your development progress to date with a view to identifying key emerging issues, development challenges and gaps, and priority areas that are important for the country's development agenda and that present engagement opportunities to the bank to help advance development goals.
The CDB representative said they anticipate solid results from the joint venture, noting that through the Ambition strategy, it will help SVG re-engineer economic growth, enable enhanced human and social development, preserve environmental sustainability, and enhance climate resilience. Noting that the ministerial responsibility of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning is one of transformation, development, and resilience building, Minister Camilo Gonzalez told the ceremony that the story of development in SVG today focuses on how quickly it can recover from setbacks.
You grow and you develop for a few years and then hurricane. And you're set back 4 or 5 years. You have to rebuild your water infrastructure, you have to rebuild your electricity infrastructure, and things that you had planned are put on pause while you get back to where you were before the disaster. And you go along for a couple more years, boom, a volcano erupts, and you're set back a decade or more developmentally. And you have a couple of years of peace, and then boom, banks start collapsing in the United States or the United Kingdom, and there's contagion and there's a global economic crisis, and boom, you're back to square one again. And so you're constantly, as Michael Manley once said, trying to go up the down escalator. You're constantly trying to get back to where you were so you can get back to the business of development. And the issue of resilience is about shortening that recovery window. So if you have built enough resilience into your economy, if you have built enough resilience into your infrastructure, when the hurricane comes, when the volcano erupts, when the banks collapse, you don't go back a decade. Maybe you go back a year or two, and then you get back onto the business of development. So the longer it takes for us to implement our transformation agenda and our resilience building agenda, the longer it takes for us to really get on with development in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that's why this is the mandate, as I see it, of the Ministry of the Old World Economic Planning.
Minister Gonzalez said with an investment of 240 million EC dollars into SVG up until 2026, he is looking at how the programs, which form part of the country's strategy, will move the needle measurable in terms of development, transformation, and resilience building.
We are coming out of some very challenging times in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're the only country in the world in the space of 3 years to experience COVID, a volcanic eruption, and a hurricane. A lot of people forget Elsa. But we are the only ones, look around the world, to have that triple blow. And the fourth blow of the worst drought. I see some CWSA people here. The worst drought that we experienced in this country in 82 years. I don't know if 82 means that's as far back as your data recording goes, or if there was a worse one 83 years ago. I don't know. But significant. So drought, hurricane, COVID, volcano. In a 2 to 3 year period. And our response to the challenges that we face cannot be generic. It cannot look like the country engagement strategy for St. Lucia or Grenada or Dominica or Barbados. Because the challenges that we face are unique and devastating in their impact. And so I hope that as we continue to refine this engagement, we keep these things in mind. What is this going to look like in 2026? Has this $240 million been well spent? Could it have been better spent in achieving the objectives of transformation, development, and resilience building? And if we look at it globally, the entire project, and we answer that question in the negative, to say that more could have been done, then we need to fix it now and not talk about it in 2025 and 2026.
According to Gonzalez, a big part of the lesson learned from previous country engagement strategies is that it has to be better aligned with the needs of the country. And this has to be given greater attention for the success of the SVG Engagement Strategy 2022-2026.
And we have those challenges because we have limited numbers of engineers, limited numbers of procurement officers, limited numbers of architects, limited numbers of accountants, and they're doing a lot of things. And the more things you add to what they're doing, the more challenges you could potentially have with implementation. So there's constantly a race between our dreams, our aspirations, and the manpower that we have to implement those dreams and aspirations. When I look at the country engagement strategy, I'm struck by how many different discrete projects form the overall country engagement strategy. And from an implementation perspective, you're better off spending $240 million on one project than spending $240 million on 240 million projects. Because each one requires its own implementation, architecture, and infrastructure. Every project needs a project head, a project manager, a project organizer, a procurement officer, and so on and so forth. So I always look from an implementation standpoint and from an impact standpoint, bang for your buck, to concentrate on a few large projects rather than a multiplicity of small projects. Because at the end of it, you have trouble implementing them. And beyond that, you look at it at the end and say, well, where is the $240 million? Where did we spend it? On a series of tiny little things, none of which move the needle tremendously, but all of which are significant to individual permanent secretaries and individual ministers. That's something that we have to be frank about today as we go forward with our consultations. I'm not criticizing what's on the paper. I'm trying to describe the lens through which we should discuss the details of the country engagement strategy.
Also addressing the launching ceremony for the country strategy was Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who said while he understands that they are at the revision stage of the document, the money from the CDB is not enough to carry out the necessary programs for the success of the project.
If even we spend all the money within the period, the $88 million in all the period up to 2026, what we have on offer is not going to move the developmental needle at all. So there are some things in it which we have to shave out, and there are some things we have to put in. And there is more money that is required. Now, the Caribbean Development Bank itself has to acknowledge that it has to do more, better, and faster if we are going to have the requisite effect of any program of the kind which we are considering here out of this engagement. Now, what happens in the past is not necessarily a guide to the future, but lessons can be learned from the past to help us to deal with the future. And to that extent, it is important for us to do some reflections. The Caribbean Development Bank, the way it has functioned, has not been the best vehicle thus far to address issues and projects concerning climate change. They're not waiting. Nature is not waiting on the Caribbean Development Bank or any of us. And the example of Sandy Bay is a case in point. I can't come here and don't say that.
Prime Minister Gonsalves further blasted the CDB for not taking urgent actions in dealing with climate change matters in SVG and in other member states.
And what has happened at Sandy Bay? The project has gotten so much larger and more expensive because of the erosion, and CDB has pussyfooted too long on that project. And I want the people of Sandy Bay to hear me on this. That project, first of all, started with costing about $10 million. And if we had done it then, we wouldn't have had the problem which we have now. We have to now spend nearly $50 million on it. It went through various stages. Every time you do a design, or you have to perfect it, you have to do this consultancy, that consultancy. Government becomes a continuing university seminar, and Nature ain't waiting. Eroding. They have to take it out from the NDM and put it as a single project. And even now, while we're about to start, thankfully, we're reaching it. In June, July, we're going to start, hopefully. We're starting only with lots 1 and lots 2. 1 and 3, sorry, and the middle one, lot 2, is not there yet to start. But the total cost is now going to be $40-something million, maybe $50 million. And we have to pay for it. And every time I spoke about it, the bureaucrats in the CDB say, yes, but we have to study that, and we have to study this, and so on. And it just continue and continue. That is a salutary example of the slowness of the response of the Caribbean Development Bank, good as that bank is, in many respects, in dealing with a lot of urgent climate change matters. They have been too slow, too complacent, and not listening to the governments, the members, including prime ministers.
The Prime Minister Gonzalez urged the bank to make amendments to its operations, noting that there is also a slowness for self-criticisms.
It's vital if we are going to have to ward off people, some persons who want to have a diminution of the role of the CDB in these matters. I don't have to talk more than I talk in that respect, because those who are in the know will know what I'm talking about. So I am defending the CDB, but the CDB has to understand that this is a new period and we have to function very differently and faster. Sometimes it behaves like an empire in relation to its member states being colonies of the empire, the borrowing countries. And we can't have that either. I'm talking here for all the frustrated leaders across the region. But my frustration is not turning into anger, you know. No. And my frustration is not turning into divorce either. My frustration is calling for an amendment of how we function in this vital area relating to climate change.
In other news, on Friday, March 24th, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Cadet Force launched its Search and Rescue Medical Unit. The training options include land navigation, leadership, physical fitness, basic life support, survival in outdoors, first aid, CPR, mass casualty, search and rescue, and other areas. Addressing the launching ceremony, Commissioner of Police Colin John said being a member of the Cadet Force has its benefits not only to an individual but also the nation, noting that statistics have shown that a low percentage of persons who have been trained as cadets come in conflict with the law.
As chairman of the Cadet Advisory Board, I fully endorse this proposal and this initiative. I can say that being a cadet in and of itself is a benefit to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Why am I saying that? Because in my years of existence, I have seen very few persons who pass through the Cadet Corps who end up in prison. And that is evidence of itself that the Cadet Corps is doing an excellent job in pointing citizens and young people in the right direction. And I just want to commend the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel Hamilton and his predecessors. The Cadet Corps is, in fact, a force for good, and no pun intended. So I just want to encourage you as young people to stay focused, stay positive, and soak up all the training that you will be receiving as a result of this new unit being formed, and generally.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Hudson Ned, in his address at the ceremony, spoke of another project that will soon be launched to help diminish youth violence.
Here an announcement of the launch of another project in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Carry Secure second edition project. And that project is going to cater to the youth as it relates to mitigation against youth violence. And I know that there's a wonderful opportunity within the Cadet Force, not just for those who are donned in the uniforms, these beautiful green and I love to see the red beret. I actually love to see the green mixed with the red beret, but whatever you wear as part of your uniform, you really look smart and outstanding. Now, you are, to some extent, the envy of a lot of people. And what that's supposed to allow you to do is not to show yourself off and have the wrong kind of pride. But it allows you to be an influence for good. And with that, a lot of the efforts in the soon-to-be-announced program would find its way into the ranks of the cadets. And we are trusting that with the commitment that you all have made over the years, that this organization, you've been part of this organization, is that you will continue to utilize the resources invested in the organization to make it stronger and better and to be an influence for good in our...
At Friday's ceremony, members of the Search and Rescue Medical Unit of the Cadet Force displayed several simulation exercises. Here's a snippet of these exercises.
They slide the person into position on the backbone. They will now fit the spider straps to secure the person to the backbone.
Ready? Moving on 3, 2, 3, move.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the immobilization of the person.
All the ambulance.
They're now going to start CPR with one responder giving 30 chest compression, and another responder is going to use a bag valve mask and position herself to the head of the person to administer 2. Wound is still bleeding, so the responders will apply a tourniquet approximately 2 inches above the wound to help stop the bleeding and record the time.
Vincentians are being encouraged to increase their understanding of the La Soufrière volcano and to prepare for any future unrest scenarios. The call comes from the conveners of the upcoming country conference to take place tomorrow at the UWI Open Campus in Kingstown. At the conference, the UWI Seismic Research Center, UWI SRC, in partnership with the University of the West Indies UWI Open Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines and the National Emergency Management Organization NEMO, will showcase work and research based on the theme, the 2020-2021 eruption of the La Soufrière volcano, St. Vincent. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves will deliver the feature address at the opening ceremony, followed by presentations from local, regional, and international researchers. Professor of Geology at the UWI SRC and Chair of the Conference Committee, Dr. Richard Robertson, said the workings of the volcano and the response mechanisms to any unrest should be of concern to persons living on the island, and is inviting members of the public to participate in the conference, either in person or virtually. Director of the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, Michelle Forbes, said the management of the eruption resulted in many lessons being learned, and the conference allows for opportunities for discussion and sharing with both researchers and members of the public. The Open Campus in Vincent and the Grenadines said the conference will add significantly to existing community knowledge and strengthen over time the overall capacity of residents and the nation to respond effectively to future eruptions of La Soufrière. La Soufrière began erupting effusively in December 2020, with at least 31 explosive events recorded between April 9th and 22nd. The 2023 Digicel Gospel Festival was launched here. That should be the 2023 Digicel SVG Gospel Fest was launched here today at the Peace Memorial Hall. The 21st edition of the festival will run from April 2nd to 30th under the theme, A Glorious Celebration of the Gospel of Jesus Christ. Chairman of the SVG Gospel Fest Committee, Leroy Brown, says that the festival has maintained a standard of excellence and has become a vital festival in SVG.
Our commitment to people has granted growth and a new opportunity every year, touching life for Jesus Christ. As you know, the SVG Gospel Fest was established in 2003 with a focus to develop gospel expression and provide greater exposure for gospel artists, creating a spiritual awareness of God and promoting a healthy lifestyle through the gospel. The overall aim is always to bring honor and glory to God, touching lives and changing nations. The SVG Gospel Fest is a high-quality festival featuring local, regional, and international gospel talents. Throughout the many years of the festival, we have seen the growth and maturity of some of this country's leading gospel artists, not only ministering locally, but also regionally. And we do hope one of these days they're going to touch the international stage. We'll continue to work with churches to help develop and expose, as we say, their God-given talents.
Brown said he is looking forward to the new song contest this year.
Yes, we have seen raw Christian talent, if I could use that word, of original songs, original writers, by our very own people. We want to encourage more Christians to write your own songs. Gospel Fest will facilitate you. Gospel Fest is the premium Christian music here in SVG and the Caribbean by extension. We'll continue to promote the lifestyle impact of God in the lives of all who come in contact with this event and the atmosphere. As you heard, due to COVID-19, we have never backed down. We say we were hosting Gospel Fest virtually. And through that, we have some new initiative came through. For the very first time last year, we hosted 6 denominational concerts. We also host youth praise, and this age was from 15 down, drummer praise. We were also able to host our 20th award ceremony. And the award ceremony was done for persons who developers of the festival, contribution to the festival, churches, and sponsors. The theme song for our 21st edition is a glorious celebration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The SVG Gospel Fest wishes to officially acknowledge and thank Digicel for your continuing support and sponsorship of the SVG Gospel Fest for the over past 20 years. Let me say at this point, congratulations to you, Digicel, for celebrating 20 years here in our nation in SVG. And we do look forward for many more years of your service here in SVG.
Chief Cultural Officer Maxine Brown said the Department of Culture and the entire ministry has been very supportive and will continue to support the staging of Gospel Fest. She also used the opportunity to encourage the participation of all churches in the festival.
Reason 1, it is God the Almighty who has given us the time, the treasure, and the talent to be here. And so if you can make time for all programming, all sorts of programming, it's only fitting we make time for God. And it takes the form or through the Gospel Fest Committee. And so I reiterate the fact that we will continue to support this program on this ground. God gave us the talents, and it's only fitting we give back. And in giving back, as Mr. Peters already alluded to, we engage the Christian communities, and yes, I'm a proud Christian. I'm an Anglican, a proud and staunch Anglican, and God has been good to me, and so it's only fitting if I sit in the seat as Chief Cultural Officer, and I'm working on the nomenclature of Director of Culture, to look out for God's people. And I say, and I repeat, without fear or favor, we will continue to support the Gospel Fest, engaging all churches, be it Anglican, and already I stated my status, proud, staunch Anglican, Methodist, Pentecostal, Spiritual Baptist. We are all here to serve one God. And as a committee, a Christian committee, I urge you, I admonish you, I implore you to engage all churches. On that note, I'd like to highly commend.
The program of activities for the 2023 festival will commence on Sunday, April 2nd with an evening of glorious praise at the Russell's Auditorium. The curtains will come down on the festival on April 30th with the National Gospel Showcase featuring Donna Klein of the U.S. Virgin Islands and Nisha Woods of Barbados. This event will also be held at the Russell's Auditorium. The Dorsetshire Hill Government School on Monday opened its library coordinated by the Ministry of Education and National Reconciliation in collaboration with Hands Across the Sea. Addressing the opening ceremony, Principal Janice Jolks said that the school library is fundamental to the academic development of the students.
The importance of a school library for our students is a critical part of their growth academically and otherwise. With the establishment of the library, we have created a school culture that supports and encourages reading, not only for academic purposes, but also for pleasure. We have witnessed our students in their free time choosing to read a book rather than running about playing. The library offers a quiet space for students to enjoy reading books that they enjoy or that interest them. It is also another space for teachers to use as they provide their students with an environment conducive to learning, studying, and working on their projects. The library also supports our remedial reading program as our teachers use the resources to cater to the needs of all students at their appropriate reading levels. The students too are exposed to a wide range of books, which helps to build their confidence as they develop their reading skills. We are confident that as time goes by, our library will have a positive impact on our students. We have already started seeing some levels of improvement in reading, higher academic achievements, and positive work attitudes. These we are expecting to improve even more with time.
Representative of the Hands Across the Sea, Enna Bullock, said the teachers must be intentional in using the library resources to help the students develop their reading skills.
Successful library program. Teachers, and I'm speaking directly to you, you have to be intentional about the use of the resources that are there in the library. I encourage you to become reading models yourself, and do not underestimate the influence you can have as a teacher on the attitude of your students towards reading. So, of course, when they see you reading as teachers, you don't think they would want to follow? Yes, they would want to. It is so important that you as teachers know what is there in the library. Because if you are not familiar with what is in the library, you would not be able to use it wisely. You would not be able to tell the students about which books are there and which books they can use to support their learning.
At the launching event today, the students of the school performed poetry and songs. Here's a snippet of their performance.
To the library, we are going to the library. We are going to the library, and we'll have so much fun. People go shh at the library. People go shh at the library. People go shh at the library, and we'll have so much fun.
Open a book and you will find people and places of every kind. Open a book and you can be anything you want to be. Open a book and you can share wondrous words you find in there. Open a book and I will too. You read to me and I'll read to you. Look in a book. Look in a book and you will see words and magic and mystery. Look in a book and you will find sense and nonsense of every kind. One thing that I've learned as I've got older is literature. Lights up life and makes it brighter, and that beauty is in the eyes of the book holder.
The Dorsetshire Hill School Library was funded by the Mustique Charitable Trust and Hands Across the Sea. Acknowledgements were also given to the former principal, Mrs. James, and Michael Duncan. In police news this evening, police have arrested and charged Diallo Small, a 34-year-old businessman of French's, with the offense of theft. Small is accused of stealing 10,000 DC dollars in cash, the property of a 40-year-old business manager of South Union. The incident is said to have occurred at Kingstown at about 1 p.m. on July 13th. The accused was further charged with the theft of $14,000 in cash, EC dollars in cash, the property of a 40-year-old business manager of South Union. This incident occurred at Kingstown at about 3 p.m. on October 2nd, 2020. Small is to appear at the Serious Offences Court to answer the charges. Meanwhile, police have arrested and jointly charged Kelvin Mackey, an unemployed 33-year-old of Sion Hill, and Stephen Stevens, a 31-year-old porter of Walvaroo, with having in their possession one Glock 22 pistol, serial number NM875US, a prohibited weapon without the authorization of the Minister of National Security. Both men were additionally charged with having in their possession 16 rounds of Glock of .40 ammunition without a license issued under the Firearms Act. The incident occurred at Dorsetshire Hill at about 10:15 p.m. on Friday, March 24th. The accused men appeared at the Serious Offences Court on Monday to answer to the charges. Mackey pleaded guilty, while Stevens pleaded not guilty. Both were remanded into custody at His Majesty's Prison until Thursday, March 30th, for a hearing of the facts in the case.